This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by North Dakota Tourism. Start planning your fall hunt in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. My guest today is Kelsi Wehrman. She works at Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever in the state of Nebraska. She's also one of the founders of a group called Beyond the Shot. Her hunting mission revolves around bringing more people into the field, especially women. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton is our producer. Today's guest comes to us from the state of Nebraska. Her name is Kelsi Wehrman, and she works for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. She also has a personal mission to get more people in the field, especially women. Kelsi, welcome to today's episode. Does it feel like hunting season down in Nebraska yet?
You know, it's really getting there. I just started to notice a lot of doves flying, and that's always one of the biggest indicators. And then, last week the temperatures were, it's starting to feel a little like fall. We sure bounced back with high temperatures this last weekend, but it's getting there. Even just some of our promotion and our conversations with our state agency, the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, we're really gearing up to tackle things this fall and hopefully offer some new opportunities for new hunters.
Which part of the state do you call home?
So I live south central Nebraska, down by Nelson. It's a small rural community. We farm and ranch down here and have 3 kids.
Gotcha. Has that always been home for you?
Nope. I'm originally from Fairbury, Nebraska, so that's about 45 to an hour east of where I live now. And so I grew up on a farm down there, just about 3 miles from the state line in southeast Nebraska.
Gotcha. Did you grow up hunting?
I didn't. So my dad hunted. He would go deer hunting, but that was always just kind of what he did. That was his thing. He worked hard, and he looked forward to that. That 10-day window, that 9-10-day window, and he only had the weekends to hunt, and so that was his time. And it was not a family affair, other than being extremely excited when he brought home a buck. But
yeah,
but that was probably about it. We really just didn't get into it. It wasn't until after college I started hunting, and even that, I think every hunter has their journey of how they got into the field, or and I would say, mine really started after I graduated from UNL. I had a fisheries and wildlife degree. I took a position with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission as a technician. Very similar to how a lot of people start in this field. I was working on some data entry stuff, but I was lucky enough that my office was located. I don't even know how I got to be in that particular office. I think somebody had moved on, so it was an empty spot that I filled. But it was right next to the big game manager, and it was next to the waterfowl manager, and also next to the secretary. So I got to I got introduced just by being not even part of those conversations, just by listening, really, while I was doing my temporary work, I just remember turkey season came about, and there was just all this excitement, positive, negative, everybody calls the state agency and lets them know if they're doing good or if they're doing poor, any of things. And so I got to really I mean, I just got to experience that whole atmosphere just by sitting at my desk. And
Really?
so
Just
I'm
from
thinking, I'm
coworkers
like,
or from people
what's
that called
that?
in? Just
Both.
from coworkers? Okay.
Yeah, both. Just listening to the game managers talk about it, listening to the secretary take these phone calls. Um, and I just remember, growing up on a farm, like we had turkeys, but there was a point where the turkey population just really exploded. And my dad didn't hunt turkeys, and who really, we had cattle, and so the turkeys would come in and feed. And I mean, he really enjoyed having them. And so nobody hunted turkeys on our place. That was, my dad was just really proud to have those turkeys, because when he first bought the place in 1980, there wasn't a turkey on the place at all, and so then all of a sudden in like 2000, probably early 2000s, there was a ton of turkeys, and he was just really, really happy to see that. And so um, I guess going back to where I was sitting in the desk and listening to all this conversation, I'm like, wow, this seems like kind of a fun thing to do, and I know where there's some turkeys. So I went home. I was in college, so I went back to my parents that weekend, and I was like, Dad, I think I'm gonna shoot a turkey. And he's like, what?
You're gonna what?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't think he really knew that I was interested. Well, I mean, I'd never really said anything before. And so he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, do you have a gun? And he's like, yeah, I'll go get you one. So he got me this single shot, shotgun, this just real old, old gun. And I went out in my jeans, and I don't even know if I had a camo sweatshirt. I can't exactly remember that
Your
part.
dad didn't get you all dressed and ready to go?
No, no,
What the heck, Dad?
no. Well, because he had no idea that I was interested. Because
Wow. So were you comfortable taking the shotgun out? Had you shot a shotgun prior to
I
that?
had shot a little bit, but mostly just, again, growing up on a farm, my older brother had a BB gun, and so we would shoot stuff with the BB gun. And then, there was a few times where we would shoot a little bit of blue rock just in the yard, with, I mean, you'll laugh, but it's just like my dad would actually like throw the blue rock. I mean, we didn't have like a nice setup or anything.
That's okay. I,
Or
I,
he would have we did have like one of those slingers,
yeah.
Um, and so we would do that once in a while, but it wasn't, it just wasn't a big thing, because, they were just, my dad and my brothers were really more into the deer hunting. And so I had shot a little bit, but not much. And so, yeah, so that first turkey hunting experience, it was the fall season, which, is definitely different than hunting spring turkey.
Yep.
Um, but we had a good idea of where the turkeys were going to be, because they they did the same thing every day. So my dad just told me where to go, and I ended up just shooting one.
Did you sit directly underneath his bird feeder, or did you go out in the trees?
No, I was kind of at the edge of the property, and I hid behind a tree.
Nice. Did you get one?
I did, yeah. And so
Nice.
it was just really, I just remember it was such a bizarre feeling, because I mean, you're standing there, and you really did not do anything to prepare.
Yeah.
I mean, I really just grabbed a gun and went out, and I stood behind a tree and waited for them to walk by. And I shot one, and I would say there's probably a group of like 6 or 8 walking together, and one dropped, and I was not mentally prepared, because I didn't prepare for any of this. I just thought it would be a fun thing to do. And so I just went out there, and this bird is laying there, and all its friends are like, what happened? What has happened? And so Um, so I mean, I can honestly say I did not feel good about that. I was like,
Yeah.
man, not as fun as I thought it was gonna be. And so
It got real serious real quick, didn't it?
it did. Yeah, it did. And so, I brought this bird back and my parents are there, at the house and they're like, you got one. And I'm just like, yeah, I did. I'm like,
Was your heart pumping when the birds were coming in?
a little bit, but it's still I mean, yeah, a little bit. But it wasn't like what you would picture. It was just like, oh wow, they're coming. I shot one, it dropped. I'm like, that was it. I'm like, this is what people do. This is fun. And so I mean, it was just a really weird moment. And so it was probably it was probably a couple years before I really decided, before I got into hunting other species and other situations where you do have to work at it and you do have to, especially turkeys, you have to call them in or be, a little bit more strategic than what I was. And so,
Yeah.
so I would say that experience was, it was good, but as like a first time experience, it was kind of odd because I didn't get it. Even though I shot the turkey and, it was a successful hunt, it really wasn't much of a hunt. And so it was kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And so it sure wasn't until I started like, upland game hunting where that was hunting. That was going out and finding wild birds and or not finding wild birds and walking the hills and then much later getting a bird dog that now I feel like, okay, I understand why people do this.
Right. Well, you've become quite an advocate for hunting and for other hunters. We'll get into this, but I got to understand, why didn't you just quit that day after pulling the trigger the first time?
you know I would say, so I would say, like, when I started up again, it was just a different atmosphere. So I did that when, again, like right after college, when I was working temporary positions, and then I got into, I started with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever as a farm bill wildlife biologist, and my location was West Central Nebraska. I covered like the southwest part of the state, and that's where a lot of our pheasant and quail population is. There's some prairie chickens down there as well. And so then, when I got on with PF, I just, I had some coworkers um, and colleagues that they were really interested or really excited about upland game hunting. And I still felt like, okay, well, I've shot a turkey, I'm a hunter. But then when you start going with people that it's just a totally different ball game. And so I had just had some great mentors that really got me um, got me set up. They went with me so I could purchase a shotgun and, even clothing. I had to order some clothes online, but, like women clothing 15 years ago or, 10 years ago especially for our upland game, it was almost non-existent. So, some of that stuff I had to kind of work through. But, you know, I think that was all kind of part of the excitement too, was that whole atmosphere. I wasn't just going out and I didn't know where the birds were. I had a good indication of where they would be, but, I was able to go with other hunters and see how it was done, and it wasn't necessarily like one-on-one mentoring. I was part of a group. I was part of, um, I was part of this group that went out and hunted. Um, and so, I wasn't very successful, not all the time, but at that moment, at that stage, I didn't care, I was learning, and um, I was just having fun being outside. I was just having fun looking at the habitat and watching the mentors, or I guess my colleagues. I was watching how they interacted with their dogs, and just kind of I would say it was just a completely different experience and atmosphere. And so even if I shot and missed, or even if I didn't shoot, it took me a while to really gain confidence with shooting a bird that's flying away.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the bird identification, it's like, well, I think that was a rooster. I'm not going to shoot because I'm not for sure.
Yep.
And so I would say that was probably the biggest thing that got me excited, was just just that atmosphere. And then when you do harvest a rooster, I mean, everybody's excited, and so yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of really what got me back into it. Was I realized then, what it's all about, and that social support and social atmosphere was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you grew up on a farm, so you were around animals. Before you hunted, you went to school to get a wildlife degree, right? So you had this desire for the outdoors prior to hunting. Is that correct? I
Yep.
mean, or you're an interest in animals. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So, yep. So I would say my interest kind of evolved. Initially when I was going to school, it was more like I wanted to be, I wanted to have like more hands-on experience with animals, whether it was, um, working in a zoo, or, being, I don't want to say a vet. I mean, that crossed my mind once, but that was about it. But just more like hands-on, type wildlife, or, well, I don't even want to say wildlife because it was more just like animals. But then as I started to, as I graduated, started to look at different jobs, um, you know, I had another temporary position with the Game and Parks Commission, working more with private landowners, and
Okay.
that's when I decided, I'm like, yeah, this is where I fit. This is my niche. So growing up on a farm, I understood the language, I understood the economics and the thought process of why you would or wouldn't do conservation work. And um, so that's kind of what brought me to Pheasants Forever, was more that private landowner um, connection. And these farm bill biologist positions, it's working one-on-one with private landowners. And so I, the hunting thing was really just kind of what came out of the position, but really I took the job because of the wildlife conservation and the work putting habitat on the ground.
Gotcha. How long have you been with Pheasants Forever now?
I'm going on 14 years. So
Okay.
yeah, so I started out uh, as a farm bill biologist, kind of out west central Nebraska. And then when I got married, then I transferred. I was able to transfer and take another. It was the same position, just different location in south central Nebraska. And then I've been the state coordinator 6 years now.
Gotcha. What does your job look like today? I mean, pre-COVID and now in COVID. What does it look
Right.
like today as a state coordinator for Pheasants Forever?
Sure. Yeah. So, um, you know, it's a great job. There's a lot of flexibility, and so part of my position is identifying issues in the state. Identifying, maybe it's a lack of funding, or maybe it's a lack of practical use of a conservation program, or maybe it's just lack of wildlife populations or upland game populations. and so a lot of my job is just looking at those issues, like what are the roadblocks for us to get more hunters, get more wildlife, get more public access, and then work with a team of people to try and address those issues. So we've got 34 employees here in the state, and so I just oversee those positions. We've got a really good structure in place, and so I just oversee those activities, and then work with a lot of different partners. So NRCS is a major partner, FSA, Fish and Wildlife Service, Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. We all work together. We have a common goal, which is conservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever our organization can bring to the table is, to help help solve these issues or help fill a gap. That's what we do. So right now it's more, just trying to get more funding and create flexible opportunities, put more tools in the toolbox for the biologists to use when working with private landowners.
Got it. Well, this week on our television show, The Flush, we are airing your story, which goes beyond kind of your day-to-day duties at Pheasants Forever, because you are one of the founders of an all-women's hunting group called Beyond the Shot. How and when did that get started?
Yeah, so the Beyond the Shot is relatively new, and it continues to evolve. And so in 2018, that kind of late summer, we were approached by the state agency, and they had an idea of creating this. It's called the Upland Slam, and they wanted to know if we would partner. And then we talked, as kind of this committee or group formed with the Upland Slam. We talked, about, okay, what's going to motivate people to go out and do the Upland Slam? How do we promote it? How do we get participants?
Mm-hmm.
And so what the Upland Slam is in Nebraska. It's basically a challenge to hunters to harvest a greater prairie chicken, a sharp-tailed grouse, a pheasant, and a bobwhite quail, all in one season. And if you do that, you get a nice pin and a certificate, and then you also get entered into various drawings. So like throughout the season, we give monthly prizes for people that are submitting their harvest information. And then at the end of the season, we give out a shotgun, different prize packages, and print of the year. We've made Upland Slam tumblers. Those are really popular, but you can't get a Upland Slam tumbler unless you actually completed.
You have to get all the birds, right?
Yeah. Yep. And so there's a lot of different things, prize wise to help motivate hunters. But the biggest thing is, the thing that we've seen is, just with that challenge, more people are aware of the grouse opportunities in the state. And, more people are actively hunting grouse, whereas before maybe they were just doing pheasant, or maybe they were just doing quail, or, there wasn't the big motivation to go after all four before. And so that's really kind of how, and when the Beyond the Shot group started was, being part of those conversations to build the Upland Slam. Pheasants Forever, and I was contacted mainly as a partner, not necessarily a hunter that would actually go do that, And so when we're having these conversations, I'm like, man, this sounds really fun. I'm like, this sounds fantastic. And so I was interested in trying to complete it. And, just a couple colleagues, just visiting with some of the other women on the team, it's like, man, we can do this. Like, let's just go do it. And so that then kind of sparked the other, just more ideas, just more ideas with the women on the team, because it's a very diverse group. Like, we have some that haven't hunted in, a decade or two. And then we had others that hadn't really had hunted but not ever harvested anything. And then, we had kind of a mix of people that had been out. You would consider them, I don't know if you'd consider them more veteran hunters, but people that were more comfortable with hunting. And then you had, probably the other half of the group that was, very new to the sport. And so we picked a couple weekends and went out and camped and went grouse hunting, because with sharptail and prairie chickens, you want to hunt early. So you want to hunt September, October, because once it starts getting cold, it's a lot harder to harvest those species. And if they've been hunted a few times, then it's really, really difficult. And I mean, once they get up and fly, they're going to fly forever.
Unless you just really you stumble onto some dumb luck like myself. I was down there in late November a couple years ago, and I got a prairie chicken that flushed right in front of me on public land. It was spectacular, and none of us expected it because it was late in the season. So I guess technically it's possible you can get them later, but yes, absolutely, right. Earlier is definitely better on those birds.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And so. So we went out kind of the first time in it was mid-September, and camped and walked the fields and everything, and it was I want to say I think there was 6 of us on that trip, and just being with a group that's a diverse group of new hunters and veteran hunters. We were all, I would say, we were all there for probably slightly different reasons. Our stories were different. Some had grown up where their dads took them quite a bit. Some, didn't have those opportunities. Some, hunted with their boyfriends. So our group was definitely different. But being in a camp with somebody, with these ladies, it was like, wow, this is really the start of something really special, really unique. And so that particular trip, I think we spent probably 2 solid days in the field, and we didn't harvest anything. We had some shots, we had lots of opportunity. But it was just a blast, and we came back empty-handed. But man, we sure had some memories and laughs, and it was a lot of fun. And so that it's just really evolved from there. So this year, and like I mentioned, we've also had we have new people coming into the team. They're taking positions with us. And, if they have any interest in hunting, we're like, hey, you really need to come with us. Because, if you have any interest, we can help you along the way. You can use our shotguns, just try it out, see what it's all about. And so this year we're really going to focus more on like the mentoring aspect and the wild game cooking, and utilizing the harvest for utilizing the birds for something other than just the food. A couple of the ladies are just really fantastic with utilizing feathers for crafts, or even earrings. Some of the girls have made earrings, which I had never thought of. That's not really, I don't know. That was not something that I had really thought of before. And they're really creative. And so some of the stories that we're going to highlight this upcoming year are, just wild game cooking recipes. And we're actually working on a video to help highlight that, and like cooking demonstrations. And then we're hoping to take on a few more mentees that are outside of the group. So whether that's going to be, new women hunters or youth or new, maybe it's not even a woman or a woman. It, certainly could be a new male hunter as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just, I think our objective is to show people you don't have to be this big expert to mentor.
Right.
You can go with a mentee and figure it out. You don't have to say this is what you need to do, this is how you do it, and be successful. You know and I again, kind of going back to my first story, or how I got involved with upland game. That was kind of, just that atmosphere and hunting in a group where there wasn't a lot of pressure. That's what I really enjoyed about how I learned to hunt. And so those are some of the things that we're really hoping to bring in this year. Is now that we've kind of been out doing it on our own, figured out, just the techniques, and if we should camp, if we should stay in a room, or where to go, even identification, bird identification, those sorts of things. Now we've kind of built that confidence the last couple of years, and so now I think we're definitely ready to bring in the mentees, and then also some of the girls, just what else you can do with a bird after you harvest it, or even people that aren't interested in hunting. But if their significant other brings a bird home, like, what else can you do with this other than cook it? And so that's kind of what we're gearing up for this year. We're going to do. I'm pretty excited. We're going to do a pheasant and quail hunt, and then we're also going to do a waterfowl hunt. Which some of us, I've gone waterfowl hunting, but I do not consider myself a duck hunter at all. But that's something that we're gonna really get into. And there's probably a couple, there's a couple girls on the team that are really, pretty good waterfowl hunters, and then there's the rest of us. And so, so go and learn from them, and then we're also gonna do a deer hunt. Some of the girls did that this last year. They went out, and again, most of them had never harvested a big game before, and a couple of the girls were more experienced with that. And so we got set up on some fields that were getting, some having crop depredation issues. And the landowner said, yes, have at it, shoot does. So the girls ended up harvesting, I want to say they harvested 7 or 8 mule deer does in 2 days.
Wow.
And it was
good for them.
Yes, exactly. It was so exciting I wasn't able to make that trip, but it was exciting to see those pictures and their success. So that's another thing that we're going to try and do again this year, and bring some new hunters with us, and really teach that whole hunting here. And
You're providing a lot of opportunities out there. I do want to ask you about a few of these opportunities and some of the challenges that you're up against. But first, I do have some good news from our title sponsor, North Dakota Tourism. The roosters are calling in North Dakota. The ringneck pheasant crowing count is up 15% this year in 2020, with an estimated 4 million breeding ducks, up 18% this year. North Dakota's central region is prime habitat for hunting waterfowl and upland birds. Plus, North Dakota has more than 700,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit North Dakota Game and Fish Department or legendarynd.com. All right, Kelsi, you have a lot of opportunities available for women this year that can join you. Beyond the Shot is kind of an extension of the program On the Wing. What is On the Wing?
Yeah. So it's Women on the Wing. It's a national It's kind of just a national effort to get more women involved in conservation, hunting. Even there's a lot of different outreach efforts that we do, and so Women on the Wing is, it's that national concept of, it's not just a male hunting sport. This is
Mm-hmm.
something that anybody can be involved in. And one of the really neat things that I connect with is, as a woman hunter, but then also as a mom, like, these are things that I can take my kids to do. These are things that families can do together, as opposed to, like, going back to my first story. When I grew up, that was just my dad's thing. Like, we just didn't talk about it. That wasn't really, it just wasn't even a thought that I would be interested, or, and so, like, part of, this full circle conversation is, okay, women are the fastest growing demographic in the hunting sport.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also interesting because some will say, looking at all the research and I guess more the statistics and numbers, women might get into it, but they might also leave quicker. But one of the things that we're also seeing is women are more apt to take other people. And some of that, I think, is, it definitely could be that family activity. So I just the women outreach events, a lot of it is really just trying to show women that, yes, we can do this, and how this is how we do it. And then theoretically, then once they're comfortable, then they will bring other people into the sport. So that's kind of, one of the main goals. We do have, we've got women chapters in some of our other states. And the other really neat opportunity that this initiative brings is, so landowners, so women make up about 50% of landowners. And so, and especially with my former position, working one-on-one with landowners, and owning land, ourselves, there's a lot of women landowners that they're not interested in hunting at all. And that's completely fine. That's just not, they haven't, that wasn't their upbringing. But they are very, very, very interested in conservation. And they're interested in the pollinator aspects and the grassland songbird aspects, or quail, hearing quail, that matters to them. Or even seeing pheasants, just being around those, the wildlife on their property that I mean, they influenced. They may not know that, they may not think about that, but the way that they're managing their property is influencing the area wildlife. And so we actually do have some programs geared specific to women landowners, and a lot of that is more just being able to have those conversations. Why? What do you want from this property? What's important to you? And so being able to just come together and have those open conversations in more of like almost like a support, group support format. So that's one of the really neat things about that initiative as well.
Are you seeing the women's Pheasants Forever groups? Are they growing, or where do you are they stable, or what's happening with those?
I would say, if you look at just like the women only chapters,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's growing in some areas. But I would say, just in general, women entering the chapters as a committee member, that's
Mm-hmm.
growing as well. And that's kind of like a chapter that has women on the board, women and men. That seems to be just a really successful model because, um, you know, sometimes we look at things differently. We look at, if we're putting on a banquet, we look at the layout, we look at, well, that looks like crap, nobody's going to buy that. Why don't we, have this displayed better, or even just like the banquet bulletin, or, booklet. It's like you open something up and if it doesn't look professional, it looks like what it is, it just doesn't. People are going to spend money if it looks more professional, or if it's the whole design is more professional. And so those are certain things that I've really noticed. Been on quite a few local chapter committees, just moving around the state, and that hit. I mean, I realized that right away. It's like, you guys have great, fantastic ideas. Let me just like make this look better.
Let me just help you finish it to do it right.
Yeah. Yep.
So just
Go
to
ahead.
kind of change the subject a little bit, you mentioned earlier that there are more and more women getting into hunting. It's a fast growing segment in the outdoors. How do you think we can keep this trend growing?
So I did mention like the clothing aspect, but I also think like marketing, how like continue to tell the story, even just like when I look at Pheasants Forever, there's still a lot of people that see Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever as the hunting organization. But we're really more about like habitat, and now a lot more about hunter recruitment. And so I think we need to continue to tell that broader story. That it's not just all about going out and that harvest. If you're if you harvest a species, no matter what it is, that's a success. If you don't harvest, it's not a success. I think just getting away from that and just telling the whole broad story, of how did you get that, or even bringing in that hunting dog. I know that has a um, some people hunt just because they want to get their dog out. They're motivated by watching their dog work, or maybe their dog only has a couple more seasons left, and so they want to get out as much as possible. um, you know Bringing all of those aspects together, and then just like I mentioned, like the clothing, I think that has come such a long way from when I first started. And just making it more apparent to women that this is a women's sport and it can be a women's sport, and this is how you can do it. And then then again, like making it even more family oriented, where it's not just that dad that takes the kids. It's it can definitely be the mom that shows the kids how to do it. And sitting in a turkey blind, with your kids. I mean, there's parts of that where you're like, there's good and bad sitting that close with your kids, for an extended
Right. I mean, I
time.
get what you're saying. There's a lot of people that they want to escape from certain things and just have that peace and quiet in the outdoors.
Right.
I
Right.
would also say too, I mean, just some observations on my end. My wife went hunting with me for the first time last year. It can be an intimidating thing for some people. I think what you're doing and what you might, maybe you see it, maybe you don't, but you're not an intimidating person. And so when other women get to go hunt with you, they get to experience a lot of the things that everyone that hunts and loves to hunt, they get to experience that from the perspective of somebody that doesn't put any pressure on them. And that's huge. I mean, what you're doing is changing the lives of other women and other families. You probably don't realize that, but you're changing other families at the same time. And if we can just get more women that would offer kind of what you're doing there with Beyond the Shot, in giving other ladies just the opportunity to take something out of the hunt, they may go back and then want to in turn spend time with their husband in the field or with their
Right.
kids. But they don't know it yet because they haven't experienced it yet. If let's just say there's a husband listening right now that says, gosh, I'd really like for my wife to just walk out in the prairie sometime. And maybe it means that she's not doing it with me for the first time. Is there a way that they can do it? I mean, it just seems like the biggest limiting factor to hunters today is just opportunities, right?
Right.
Land
Yep.
and people to go with. So, do you see that groups like yours will continue to grow? And hopefully they will. And if so, have you kind of built a framework, do you think, that could be a model for other women to kind of keep, you're in Nebraska, but let's say somebody in South Dakota wants to do it, or
Right.
in Iowa or Minnesota or wherever, but can this
Yep.
model grow?
Yes, absolutely. And so we do have a few other things in the works, really just doing what you just mentioned, because we have seen that, that limiting factor where, sometimes women just learn, they learn differently. I don't want to say better because it's not, it's not a
Hmm.
competition by any means, but they learn differently from other women. Um, and so so we've got a couple things in the works. We started we call it just like a advisory hunt committee where it's just, it's staff. And so, and it's on our own time. It's all volunteer. But if we want to take other people out on the weekends or whenever, um, basically those new hunters are able to contact Holly Green. She's our outreach and communications coordinator, and then just they tell us what they're interested in. If they're wanting to hunt pheasant, quail, upland game, or even big game, and then the location, how far they're willing to drive. And then we'll be able to kind of take those parameters and set them up with some of our field staff, um, or really anyone. And it's so I mean that's kind of that's what we have right now. It's very small. I'm a little I'm a little hesitant to like promote it huge because I don't want it to get out of control and then our staff are like, hey, I have my job to do.
Right, right. Well,
But
it could just be. I mean, this is beyond your job, right? This is not.
right,
This is something
right,
you're doing when you're not in the office. So this
right.
could be a volunteer thing for
Yes.
another. I mean, maybe a man starts it, or maybe his
Yes.
wife, or maybe a lady that's listening right now says, you know what, I'm going to do this in Minnesota. I'm going to do it. I just need to. I know I can get some friends in. Uh, can they reach out to Pheasants Forever and say,
Yeah.
hey, I want to start a group, and then you can direct people to me if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I guess the other thing that is happening is there is a multi-state grant proposal that was submitted just recently, kind of doing the same thing but on a broader scale. So, it's almost like a matchmaker type thing. And so, if somebody is a new hunter or maybe they're an experienced hunter and they're just looking for that next step opportunity, just that, we've even called it maybe like a breakthrough program where, maybe you went to becoming an outdoors woman activity or some other activity. And so you learn the basics, you've gone out maybe once or twice, you really just need a little more mentoring in the field or more hunting experience in the field before you feel confident to go out and do it on your own. Um, and so that's a little bit of what this matchmaker thing is trying. What we're trying to get at is so if we
Is that
have
the next? Is that the Next Steps program?
that's actually a little bit different, but I can touch on that as well. And so, I guess just to wrap up, we are
Yeah.
definitely looking at those other opportunities to match hunters and non-hunters or beginning hunters, and make that a little bit easier because you're right. I mean, if somebody doesn't show you and take the time to show you, you're probably not going to just go out and do it by yourself. Um, that's the most common anyway. So,
Well,
um,
there certainly are not a lack of opportunities for all of us if we choose to make a difference, or if we choose to take even just one person hunting. If we choose to start a hunting group like yours, they're out there. You wanted to touch on the Next Steps program?
yeah. So in Nebraska, we've been doing youth mentor hunts for 25 years, almost 25 years now. And that's, for a variety of reasons, that's targeting 12 to 15, that age group, mainly because of the way the license laws are written. And so that 12 to 15 youth can come in, work with our local chapters. Our chapters put these on. We've got 62 chapters in the state. They hold about 55 to 60 events every year, bringing on these youth. So one thing that we've seen is if somebody, that 12 to 15 age group, if they go through hunter ed, and um, and then if they go on to it, so if they solely go through a hunter ed class, we're seeing about 50% return to the field. So about 50% of those are actually becoming a hunter or an angler. They're showing up in the license database somewhere. But if they actually go one step to the youth mentor hunt and get that one-on-one assistance, then 70% of those individuals are showing up in the license database, meaning 70% of them are actually going on to purchase a license, becoming hunters or anglers. And so when you look at events like that, it is, it's a one-day thing. And so we're we're giving them the basics and saying good luck. And
Right.
that's absolutely really important. But the other side of that is, okay, so we can see that those are making a difference, but what if we give them one more opportunity? That next step hunt program is kind of what we're trying and testing out now. And so right now we're looking at youth mentor hunt graduates, because we know who they are and we can track them through the system, and inviting them out to come out to a controlled shooting area. But it's not just them. We're requiring that they bring an adult hunting partner. So that and that adult hunting partner would be somebody that's not as experienced as well. So we're basically taking a younger individual or new hunter that is interested, but they're not, they don't have the confidence. They don't have everything that they need to actually become a hunter. And so we're pairing them up with somebody they know, somebody they're comfortable with, like a parent or a guardian or an uncle or an aunt, or maybe just an older family friend or whatever. And that's up to them. So basically that youth, that adult hunting partner, goes out with one of our chapter volunteers that's a mentor, at a controlled shooting area. So it's a very controlled environment. They get to see the dog work. They get that whole experience, but it's more of a group hunt. It's not, it's not the youth mentor hunt where it's one-on-one. It's a group activity, with just the three of them. And they can do that 3 times through the season. So, and then they would each get 3 birds. So basically, we'll pay, it's a partnership with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. We'll pay for 9 birds for that hunting group up to 3 times per season. And so, and the important part is to track all of this, right? I mean, we can do a lot of things, but if we're not measuring it, who knows if it's actually working? So, the important part is to track them while they move through this system, starting with the hunting ed class, then youth mentor hunt, then next steps, and then, basically just following them throughout their hunting life. I mean, if you think about 10 years from now, we should have a really good indication of how that person is moving through the system.
Yep.
And then, I guess moving on, we want to expand just beyond the youth, that youth age. We know that there's a significant gap from 16 to 23. And so maybe this program is going to help fill that gap, even if they didn't do a youth mentor hunt, and maybe it's part of a trap team. Maybe those individuals are part of a trap team, but just really haven't gone the extra step to hunt, or maybe they're part of an archery in the schools team or something like that. Or maybe they're not, maybe they're not a part of any organized group like that. And so the hope is that we are going to offer, the Next Steps program to fill the gaps. Like I said, we're really kicking it off this year. We did some pilot hunts last year to really figure out our system. Everything from registration to hats to who's going to mentor. Why wouldn't somebody mentor? Why wouldn't somebody participate? So we learned a lot the last few months, and now we're trying to kind of pull it all together and kicking it off this year.
Man, it's fantastic. You're doing a lot of good work. Does your dad ever look back on it and say, "Man, I wish I'd have taken my daughter hunting earlier in life"?
I have no idea.
You don't know.
I don't know.
All right, last question for you. What are you seeing on the ground right now in Nebraska, and are you guys optimistic for the hunting season coming up?
Yes, yeah. So our quail population it's just always it seems to be getting better and better. And weather patterns always have some sort of an impact. For both pheasants and quail. But I've heard quite a few roosters and quail just on my own property, just outside, and then and I'm hearing them where I hadn't heard them before, and so there's a few things that have been happening with habitat. So we had those spring floods. Was that last year? That the bomb cyclone thing.
Yep.
Obviously that was detrimental. But one thing that has come out of that is there were a lot of acres that farmers weren't able to plant those to that intensive crop. So they weren't able to go into corn or soybeans, and so those like the preventive plant fields just exploded with weeds. And some farmers did put in, like a forage crop like cane or sorghum, anything like that. But those areas have responded really well. And then the other thing is the CRP sign up. I mean, we cannot stress enough how important CRP is to pheasants and quail and other wildlife. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for other programs, and we're looking at cover crops. We're looking at just buffers or prairie strips or corners or any of those things. But in general, a CRP sign up is going to result in more pheasant and quail habitat. So this last year, I think Nebraska had about an 89% acceptance rate. We're extremely excited about that, being able to actually put those those acres on the ground. And then we're going to have another sign up in December. As far as what we're hearing now, the new farm bill, that changed. So from what we've been told, we'll have a sign up every year in the winter. And then we also have the continuous CRP sign up. So there's a lot of opportunity to put habitat on the ground in a cost-effective manner. And so, I can't help but be optimistic, because we went 3 years without CRP, without a CRP sign up. And, now it's almost like that, that boom or bust type cycle. And so I feel like we're kind of in that boom cycle now. So yeah, I'm optimistic. The weather has been fantastic. We haven't had we have had a ton of hot days, and we've got some nice rains, not like, not huge amounts of rains that are flooding, but some nice consistent rains. And then we've had a little bit of hail, which is, can be detrimental. But overall, I think it's going to be a good year.
There's a lot of optimism. There's so much optimism right now for people that want to just get out in the field, myself included, and just walk the grass again, right? I mean, get out of our houses, get away from the world really for a couple of days.
Right.
And it's the best place is out in the open grasslands. I absolutely love it. So if people want to watch this week your story, and your mission, it's one of my favorite episodes of the entire year, just because you can see your passion. Kelsi, I know you haven't watched it. I know you have a date set up with the ladies to all watch this together. So I'm excited for you to do that. But I think anybody who watches this show is really going to see your guys' passion come through. And spoiler alert, somebody gets their first bird on this hunt, and the joy just really was touching. It was really touching. I didn't get to be there to experience this hunt with you. Ron Shera did. But I feel like he did a great job of telling your story and everything that you ladies are doing. So I hope you enjoy watching. I hope everyone else enjoys watching it too. And thank you, Kelsi, for everything that you are doing to help get more hunters in the field.
Absolutely.
And wonderful. Once again, we want to thank North Dakota Tourism for helping us make this show possible. To big your limit this fall in North Dakota, visit legendarynd.com. Next week, a listener of this show joins me for a very interesting conversation. He became a hunter despite losing the one person he expected to be his mentor. I hope you'll join us next week for another episode of the Flush Podcast.